This wealth also brought a lot of attention from British authorities. Now, again, at this time, it's the 1760s. You know what's going on in this country. You know what's happening. Things are getting heated up, Britain began tightening control over colonial trade very, very fast, very frequently. Taxation, obviously, this was the major issue. This was the often spoke about issue. And, really, I guess when it comes to money and the government taking your money, that's when people really start to get worked up. And I understand why, and I get it. You don't want to work for money you don't get to keep. I understand that. So it's always taxation. There were laws, the Stamp Act being the biggest and most abrasive of these laws. This was just throwing people in a tizzy. And later, trade regulations, these were just angering many of the colonial merchants and many of the colonists. And obviously, this came to a boiling point, blah, blah, blah. We're going to get to that. But I will tell you that Hancock, his personal ships or his uncle's ships that he now owned, they were constantly being inspected because they were suspected of smuggling goods. Basically, it was just like, maybe the inventory and the numbers were off. They thought he was smuggling goods to avoid taxation. This was a very common practice among colonial merchants. People did this a lot. And again, it's just because people don't want to work super, super hard just to get all of their money taken. And again, at this point, it's like 4% in taxes. So, do you think the John Hancocks of the world would be rolling over in their graves if they knew how much taxes had climbed to? But regardless, survival at this time was so hard in and of itself. Like, it was so difficult to just hack it out there, and people were working their booties off and putting their lives at danger, at risk all the time. And so for someone to come in and say, now you owe us money, 4% of all of your money made, they were like, that's ass, not doing that. No, I understand that. Survival, just staying alive back then with air in your lungs was difficult. Get your hands off my money. I understand. So let me just tell you though, let me get back to the actual story and the outline, because I feel like my brain's trailing a little bit today, and I'm going to try to keep that somewhat under control. This conflict, this colonial British conflict, escalated dramatically in 1768. This is when British customs officials ended up seizing one of Hancock's ships, and this ship was actually called the Liberty, and they were accusing him of this illegal smuggling that, again, a lot of people were doing. This was just so common. Now, this seizure, this business kerfuffle and blunder, outraged the people of Boston. There were a lot of crowds that were formed. There were a lot of protests that were erupting. There were a lot of British officials who suddenly found themselves very, very, very unpopular. People were not liking them. Throw a tomato at the guy, boo him off the street. Because for many colonists, this was just one of many that symbolized British overreach, and it was getting more and more heated. They didn't like it. They wanted the British to basically leave them the hell alone. And again, I understand that. So for Hancock, this particular seizure of his ship, the Liberty, this marked the beginning of his transformation from this very, very wealthy merchant and this businessman who was on a very upward trajectory in the world of business. This is when he starts shifting, morphing, evolving into a revolutionary leader. And this, thank God for this. Okay, so sometimes somebody taking your ship is the best thing that could ever happen to you, because it lights a fire in your soul. And that's what was happening with him. So during this period that follows this ship seizure, Hancock, he ends up forming a close political partnership with our good buddy Samuel Adams. We love Sam Adams. If you haven't watched the Sam Adams video, I'm just going to tell you right here, right now, Samuel Adams is like immediately one of my favorite people. He was a genuine badass, a true thinker. He wasn't officially like master of whispers, but the man knew how to think, and he knew how to shape a narrative. And luckily he was on our side, because a brain like his was just necessary. And so Hancock and Sam Adams, they're becoming good pals. They are really thinking things through together. And Adams, he was becoming this master organizer and political strategist. And Hancock, he brought a lot of wealth. He brought a lot of popularity. Again, the people loved him. He was known for being a good, solid, generous, upright man. And people were loving it. And this strong public presence was very crucial to this movement and this new, like, we're in this together thing that was going on between John and Sam. So together, they were helping guide this colonial resistance in Massachusetts. And Hancock, he was actually elected to the Massachusetts legislature, and he became a leading voice that was very much opposing British authority and British policies and all of these things that Britain was just throwing at us. And he was like, this is not going to work. And I'm not afraid to say that. And a lot of people were afraid to say that because, again, you've got people in these lovely red coats prancing up and down the streets all the time. You say the wrong thing, the wrong place to the wrong person, you're going to get your ass in some trouble. But John, he said, I don't really care. This is wrong, and I'm going to say exactly what I'm thinking. And he did, and his popularity ended up growing so quickly. And this is partly because he used his own money to support political causes and public events. And that's not something that was seen very often. That's not something that we see today very often, but he was going to do it. He thought it was important enough, and he was damn right, if you ask me. So in Boston, people admired him not only for this political endeavor and this new political hat he was wearing, but also for his willingness to stand so openly against British authority. He was bold. He had the money to back it up. He had the charisma and the swagger that people took notice. He was just this beautiful recipe for change, and we needed it. I mean, the people, the colonists, they needed it. They needed someone that they admired to look up to, and John Hancock was very much that guy.